All right, let's jump in. Man, I'm like nervous for this one. Sometimes God calls me to preach something that just feels too big. Like I don't know if I can properly do it justice, but we'll see. So my family and I went to the beach a couple weeks ago. Beach is our favorite place. We love it there. Built sandcastles, played in the waves. I got to read like 4 books. It was awesome. Love that. Of the 6 people in my family, so I have 4 kids, of the 6 of us, I think my 5-year-old had the most fun. My teenagers stinking stared at their phones too much. You know, like the Atlantic Ocean, no, the little rectangle, whatever. We fought. It was great. My 8-year-old, he's a tortured soul. He's only happy when he's miserable, so he didn't have as much fun. I don't know what that is. You're like, he needs therapy. No, I need therapy. Shut up. But my 5-year-old, man, she loved it. She absolutely just loved it. So what I want to do, real quick, I want to kind of compare her approach to the ocean and mine. Okay, so the way her posture towards it, her attitude towards it, the way she approaches it, and the way I approach it. So just to clarify, in case you don't know us, she's 5, and she's about 4 foot tall, 40-ish pounds. She can barely swim. She would tell you she can swim. That's not true. She can bob in the water for a little bit, and then she goes under. I don't know if that counts, but I don't think so. And she could, where we were, she could go about 5 feet out into the water before a wave was big enough to knock her over. And if she wasn't paying attention, she'd just get leveled and she'd end up, spit out onto the sand. Me, on the other hand, I am a full-grown male, I think. I'm in my early 40s. Very early 40s. Shut up. I'm sick of this. I think I'm going to start dyeing my beard. Tired of you guys calling me old, at least with even just looking at me calling me old. I can swim. I'm not Michael Phelps, but I'm better than she is, okay? So I can actually swim. And where we were, I could go probably 50 feet out into the water before a wave was big enough to like really knock me over. So that's just kind of a comparison between the two of us. Now, she was absolutely fearless when it came to the ocean, just fearless. She kept asking to go in without her floaties on. I'm like, you can barely swim in a swimming pool. You want to go into the ocean without floaties on? No way. When the waves would come in, she'd jump like through them, like she's like a little dolphin, man. She would just go straight through those things. She kept asking to go further and further out. She'd make me like walk out there with her, and she'd be bobbing along. And then we'd get way out there, and she starts making shark jokes in the middle of the ocean. And I'm like, listen, I'm all about the humor, but there's a time and situation. And just so you know, the time and situation to make a shark joke is not when I'm chest deep in the ocean. Like, that was not cool. She thought it was hilarious. And throughout the day, she would seem to gain energy. It's like the water like energized her. She's got like mermaid blood in her or something. She loved it and was absolutely fearless. Me, on the other hand, I am not fearless when it comes to the ocean. I don't like it when the water's not clear and I can't see what's under there. I don't like it when the wind and the waves kind of pick up and it gets a little too choppy. I don't like it when there's a current. I don't like it when I feel something touch my leg. Like I'm uncomfortable. I would call myself cautious when it comes to my approach to the ocean. She's fearless. I'm cautious. My 4 foot nothing, 40-pound 5-year-old who can barely swim is fearless. And me, a full-grown male who's probably overconfident in his athletic ability, is cautious. Why? Why the difference? If we were going to pick, we should pick opposites, right? I should be the fearless one, she should be the cautious one, but why is it reversed? And then let me ask you a deeper question. Which approach is more like the one we should have when we approach God in prayer? Which one's more like the one we should have, fearless or cautious? And let me ask you, rather than a should question, how about just a what is question? How do you approach God in prayer? Like, what's your posture? What's your demeanor? What's your attitude when you approach God? It's an important question. So let me answer the first one first, like why? Why is my 5-year-old fearless and why am I cautious when it comes to the ocean? Now, there are 2 reasons. I actually asked her last week why she was fearless, and I'll tell you her answer here later. But the first reason that I've come to the conclusion of is that it comes down to understanding. She, being 5, doesn't understand just how big the ocean is. She, being 5, doesn't understand how big some of the things that lurk in the ocean are. And she doesn't understand how big the difference between her and all those things are. She's the power differential. She just can't wrap her mind around it. I kind of do. I know what a riptide is. I've seen video. That's terrifying. I don't think I can beat up a shark. I just don't. She thinks I can. I can't. I don't think so. I understand the limits of my ability to swim. Her approach to the ocean comes from a lack of understanding. My approach comes from what I do understand. So can I be honest? I think a lot of Christians' approach to God is similar to the way my daughter approaches the ocean. There's this flippant fearlessness rooted in ignorance, a flippant fearlessness that's rooted in ignorance. And I know that's a little harsh, I know that might be a little mean, but and maybe even some of you said, wait a minute, I'm supposed to approach God fearless, and you might even have a Bible verse that you want to throw at me and tell me that, and I get that. But what I worry about is that we don't understand the gravity of what it took for us to be able to approach God at all, let alone fearlessly. Do you follow? I worry that we don't understand the weight of what it took for us to be able to enter his presence in any way, let alone a fearless way. So I want to show you some things. This is a little risky. Follow me on this, please. But I want to show you some examples of what it was like to approach God in the Old Testament. Okay, I'm going to give you 4 examples. I'm going to go really fast. If you don't know the context of them, it's not that big of a deal. I'll try to explain them, but I just want to zoom through it so you can kind of get an overview of the feel of what it was like to approach God in the Old Testament. So the first one is when God and Moses have this meeting on this mountain called Mount Sinai. That's when he got the 10 Commandments. Remember, he got the tablets and stuff. So God's arranging this meeting with Moses. And God's like, yeah, okay, so Moses, you're going to come up the mountain. I'm going to come down. We're going to have this meeting. But before we do, he wanted to kind of lay out some groundwork. So God says this in Exodus 19:12. Mark off a boundary all around the mountain. Warn the people, be careful, do not come up on the mountain or even touch its boundaries. Anyone who touches the mountain will certainly be put to death. So Moses is allowed to come up. God's going to come down, but God's like, hey, everybody else, all the other Israelites, they can't come on the mountain. They can't come up the mountain. Matter of fact, they can't come near the mountain. We should probably set up a fence. They need to stay back because if they don't stay back, they're dead. That's what approaching God was like in this story is if you come too close, you're dead. Fast forward to when Solomon builds the temple in Israel. He builds this beautiful temple. It's extravagant. It's crazy. It's over the top. He finishes it. They're going to have this big party. And the priests bring the Ark of the Covenant, which is this thing that represents God's presence. They bring it and they put it in to the temple, specifically back in the place called the Holy of Holies. This is like where God was. There's a big curtain that separated the Holy of Holies from the rest of the place. And they put the Ark in there and they walk out. And then this is what happens. This is right when they put the Ark in 1 Kings 8, verse 10. When the priests came out of the holy place, a thick cloud filled the temple of the Lord. The priests could not continue their service because of the cloud, for the glorious presence of the Lord filled the temple of the Lord. So they put the ark in there, and then God comes down, and they can't even enter the temple at all, let alone the Holy of Holies. They couldn't even get in the temple. God's presence was so powerful that they couldn't approach. Fast forward again, the prophet Isaiah, so he's a prophet, he's kind of a big deal. He has this vision of the throne room of heaven, and he sees God sitting on his throne in a vision, and this is his reaction in Isaiah 6, chapter 6, verse 5. Then I said, it is all over, I am doomed, for I am a sinful man. I have filthy lips, and I live among a people with filthy lips, yet I have seen the King, the Lord of heaven's armies. So when Isaiah sees God, from a distance, he's like, I'm dead. I'm dead. Other translations say, woe is me. I am ruined. I'm undone. I'm doomed. I'm going to disintegrate right here, right now. Approaching God, even seeing God from a distance, Isaiah was like, I'm not going to make it. And then the saddest story of all, rewind back to David's time when they were moving the ark of the Lord. So I told you the ark of the Lord kind of represents God's presence, and they were moving it. They had it on an ark or on a cart that was pulled by some oxen. It's not really the way they were supposed to be transporting it, but that's what they were doing. And then this happens in 2 Samuel 6, verses 6 and 7. But when they arrived at the threshing floor of Nacon, the oxen stumbled, and Uzzah reached out his hand and steadied the ark of God. Then the Lord's anger was aroused against Uzzah, and God struck him dead because of this. So Uzzah died right there beside the ark of God. Whew. See, the other three stories were about like, this is what happens if you approach God, you're going to die. And then this one, it actually happens. Uzzah approaches, Uzzah touches the ark. And it's even this motive is, I'm just trying to steady this thing, dead. Approaching God in the Old Testament was a terrifying thing. And I know you want to ask, like, well, why? And this is the part that I'm worried I can't communicate properly because of the culture we live in, the way our society kind of views this stuff. Because like when I read these stories, I know some people are like, wow, what's wrong with God, right? Who does he think he is? And I want to say, yeah, I think that's the problem. I think we don't quite understand. We don't quite understand the being that we are approaching. See, because God is holy. The Bible calls God holy repeatedly, right? Holy. And it's this word, if you grew up in church, it almost loses its meaning. We use the word holy so much. It's in all the songs. It's just so much. But holy in the Bible kind of means other. It means separate. It means completely different. So in the Bible, the way God is talked about, you have creation, everything in existence, and then you have God. That's it. Those are like the two categories. It's created and creator. So God is in a category all by himself, and he is holy and perfect. And when God first created everything, humans actually were able to approach him until sin entered the world. And then when sin entered the world, there was a separation created. There was a split, a crack. Everything was different after that. When sin entered, we were separated from God, and death was the result, and God became unapproachable. Unapproachable. It was a deadly serious thing to approach God. Deadly serious. And I hope that, this is a couple of, a minute's worth of words for you to say, oh, I get it. That's why you can't approach God. And I know that probably doesn't remotely do it justice. But God is holy and we are not. God is God and we are not. Approaching him in our sinful state is a deadly thing. Now, in light of those, so yeah, what I want you to do, I want you to keep these stories in mind. You can't even get near the mountain, let alone get up on the mountain when God's there. You can't even enter the temple when God shows up. You can't even look at God without feeling like you're dead. You can't touch the ark without dying. Keep those stories in mind. I want to show you another story that is shocking in light of those. So Jesus, when Jesus on earth, he was traveling. And he's walking down the road and a crowd's following him. So what you should imagine a celebrity walks out of a restaurant, starts walking down the street, and the crowd that will form around him. So that's kind of what's happening with Jesus in this story. He's walking down the street and people are jostling in him, trying to get a selfie with him, and asking Jesus for his autograph, and hollering out things to Jesus. And there's just this crowd of people just buzzing around Jesus, kind of bumping into him as he's trying to walk, and the disciples are kind of trying to keep people moving along. And that's the scene here. And then this is what happens. Luke chapter 8, starting in verse 43. A woman in the crowd had suffered for 12 years with constant bleeding, and she could find no cure. Coming up behind Jesus, she touched the fringe of his robe. Immediately, the bleeding stopped. Who touched me? Jesus asked. Everyone denied it, and Peter said, Master, this whole crowd is pressing up against you. So first, let's just acknowledge that the whole scene is kind of shocking in light of the verses that we just read in the Old Testament, because if you're a Christian, we believe that Jesus is God, right? This is the incarnation. This is God come down, God with us, Emmanuel. We believe that Jesus is God in the flesh. So the fact that there's a group of people buzzing around him, that's already shocking. That's already crazy that people are bumping into Jesus, right? The people are trying to get Jesus. The people are just yelling out to him 10 feet from him, trying to get his attention. It's all crazy already. And then you have this person walk up and touch him. And then you have the most underrated Peter quote. It just explains Peter's personality perfectly. Jesus is like, hey, who touched me? And Peter's like, literally everyone? What are you talking about? We're getting bumped, we're literally actively getting bumped into right now, trying to back these people up. Everybody touched you. Jesus, what are you talking about? So Jesus clarifies in verse 46. Someone deliberately touched me, for I felt healing power go out from me. When the woman realized that she could not stay hidden, she began to tremble and fell to her knees in front of him. The whole crowd heard her explain why she had touched him and that she had been immediately healed. Gosh, I love this story. So a couple observations. This first one is important. There's a lot of people touching Jesus, but only one person gets healed. I think that's really interesting. And you have to ask the question, why? Why was the one person healed and the rest of the people remained the same? Doesn't it have to have something to do with her approach? The way she approached Jesus, her mindset, what she was believing, what she was thinking as she's approaching him? See, this is really important because I don't know about you, sometimes when I'm in church and, say we're singing a song and you see some people just having a really important, seemingly like a moment with God, and you feel like you're not, and so I don't know if I'm just gonna admit something to you guys, I can be a little judgmental sometimes. So not even here, but if I go to a pastor's conference and everybody's singing and raising their hands, and if I'm not feeling it, I look at somebody like that and I'm like, they're faking it. Isn't that awful? You're like, I don't wanna go here anymore, it's fine. But I do that. And you know why I do it? And maybe you would do it for the same reasons. The reason I do something like that, the reason I say they're faking it and is because I don't want to admit there might be something wrong with me. Why am I not experiencing whatever they're experiencing? So whatever they're experiencing has got to be fake because I don't want to have to come to some conclusions about myself. But this story shows us that you can be in the same room and we could be having different experiences with God. God could be showing up in different people's hearts and lives in a different way, because maybe their approach is different. And that's what we see here. This woman, there was something about her approach that caused her to have a different experience with Jesus than everyone else. And then my second observation here, I just want to contrast. So Uzzah touches the ark of God and dies instantly. This woman touches the hem of Jesus' robe and she's healed instantly. Those couldn't be more opposite, right? Those are the opposite story. But did you notice the woman's reaction? I think it's one of the most important parts of the story. So she touches Jesus, she gets healed, she knows she's healed. Jesus immediately perks up hey, who touched me? And you can tell the way the story's written, Peter's everybody. And then people start saying it wasn't me, which is kind of funny because the dude that 5 seconds ago bumped into Jesus, he's oh, it wasn't me. It wasn't me. They're worried about something. And it sounds like the woman at first was kind of, working her way backwards in the crowd, maybe trying to get away, but she realized Jesus wasn't going to let it go. She was trying to hide. And then she comes forward and did you notice it said she was trembling? And Mark, who also records the story, he just flat out says she was frightened. She was scared. Why? See, I think she knew something holy had just happened. She seemed to understand that what she had just done was she stepped up onto the mountain. That she entered the temple. That she saw God. That she just put her hand on the ark. She knew that whatever she did, it was something like that. So she's okay, something sacred just transpired. And she was afraid. Like Isaiah, when Isaiah saw God, he's I'm doomed. She's having that kind of experience right now. And it's this pregnant moment in the story because the way it reads, it's almost like Jesus is somebody's in trouble, So she comes and like confesses to him, hey, this is what was going on. And by the way, you healed me completely. And everybody's waiting, what's Jesus going to say? And again, it's shocking. Verse 48, he says, daughter, which is already amazing. Your faith has made you well. Go in peace. Wow. So she approaches God in the flesh and touches him. And instead of death, she receives healing. Instead of death, she receives peace. And for me, the story means more when you understand how the Jewish people approached the sacred, because she understood the weight and the gravity of what she had just done, and it made it all the sweeter when Jesus responded the way he did. But the question is how? Because can I be honest, so here's what I immediately thought of when I read the story. That I think of Uzzah. Like, can you just imagine him in heaven, like watching, like he's got his binoculars? He sees her coming, he's like, ooh, what are you doing? She reaches out her hand, she's like, oh, he touched her. She touched him. I'm gonna be seeing her in a minute. Like, like this is, like he's gotta be like, this is not gonna go well for her. And then Jesus turns around and he's like, here it comes. And Jesus says, your faith has healed you, go in peace. And if I'm Uzzah, I'm like, what? Like, I'm sorry, that's not how my story, I'm like, what God, what's going on? Like, I'd be a little upset. Like, what is the difference here? One touches the presence of God and is dead, and the other touches the presence of God and is healed. How? It's such an important question. How does approaching God in seemingly the same way have such different outcomes? Well, the answer has to do with why Jesus came. So Jesus came, and he even said, like, for the purposes of dying. Like, that's why Jesus came. So Jesus comes and he lives this perfect life, and they arrest him. And you've read the story, right? They crucify him. It's an awful experience, 6 hours worth of torture before he dies. And a lot of stuff happens that last moment. So Jesus breathes his last, and the Bible records that like the sun went black and the earthquake started. And it's as if creation itself understood the gravity of that moment. It's weird because the humans who were present didn't really get it. Like Jesus even said about the Roman centurions who were nailing to the cross, Father, forgive them for they don't know what they're doing. But creation seemed to know, and the creation is reacting to Jesus' death. But that's not the most important thing. The most important thing that happened around Jesus' death happened in Matthew 27:51. At that moment, the curtain in the sanctuary of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. So that temple where the priest couldn't even enter when God showed up, that curtain that separated the holy from the holy of holies, that curtain that represented the separation from man to God, that you cannot enter that with your sin, when Jesus dies, is torn. And it's not just torn like any old way. It was torn from top to bottom. God symbolically saying, hey, that separation, that sin that's kept you separate from God, that sin that makes God unapproachable, Jesus just died for it. He just ripped that curtain in half, and now we have access to God. What Jesus did on the cross enables us to actually approach the mountain, climb the mountain. We can enter the temple. We can see God. We can actually touch his presence now. But what I need you to see, the gravity of that moment, that Jesus died for your sin in your place, conquering sin, Satan, death, and demons. This is a cosmic moment. He paid for the sin that separates you from God. That separation that sin creates, Jesus paid for that. He paid to give us access to God. Jesus did that. It's his sacrifice. It's his forgiveness. And if you're here right now, and maybe you're not a Christian, maybe you're just somebody invited you and you may be kind of curious about things, I just want you to know that and maybe you feel that. Maybe you kind of have a sense that God is out there somewhere, but you feel like he's at a distance, and you feel a separation. You feel like there's something between you and him. And I want you to know there is. It's sin. It's yours. But the beautiful part about Christianity is what Jesus did is he came down. He died for your sin, and what you can do is you can ask him for forgiveness. You can ask him to take that sin, and the separation is gone. and you can have a relationship. You can experience God's presence in your life now. And I always want to invite you to do that. You can do it right now. You can stop listening to me and pray right now. Now, if you are a Christian and you already have accepted that forgiveness and you understand the gravity of that moment, I don't want you to approach God the way my daughter approaches the ocean. I don't. And let me clarify, because I actually think she's more right than I am. I think fearlessness is the way you're supposed to approach God. I don't think it should be cautious, but I don't want it to be fearlessness based in ignorance. I don't want it to be flippant the way you approach God. I want you to approach God with the understanding and the gratitude and the reverence because you understand what it took for you to approach him at all. And yes, free, certainly. Fearless, yes. But you have to understand what it took for that. You have to bring that with you. The Atlantic Ocean is 41 million square miles. I don't even understand what that means. No idea. It averages 3,000 miles across from the US to Europe. The deepest point is nearly 28,000 feet. Now, I looked it up because I was standing on the beach when we were there, and I looked out at the horizon. You see this beautiful curve. And I was like, I wonder how far I can see. You know, how far is that to like the edge there? So I used ChatGPT, and it was giving me all these math stuff. I'm like, just give me the answer and shut up. It said, depending on how tall you are, you can see about 2 miles to the edge, and that's as far as you can see. It's like, wow, 2 miles. It seems so big, and I'm only seeing 2 miles worth of it. That means there are 2,998 more miles that I can't even see, and even just the part that I can see feels overwhelming, but there's that much more of it. And when I walked out into the water, I could get about 5-6 feet before I started bobbing, and I was like losing my toes or kind of scratching at the sand, and I'm like, oh, okay, this is a little too deep. And if it's 28,000 feet deep, that means there are 27,995-ish feet left that I can't touch. That is an illustration of the difference between you and God, and it is an understatement. You need to understand this. Like when you approach God, how you do it is so important. Your demeanor, your posture as you approach God, it matters. And when people talk about, and I'm sorry if you do this, but when people talk about like, well, Jesus is like my homeboy, I don't know. Or you say like, it's the big man upstairs. Okay. Is that like the right way to approach him though? Like, is that how you want to talk to? Like, for me, that doesn't fit. And I know some of you are like, wait a minute. Jesus said he called us his friends. Okay. And some of you are like, perfect love casts out all fear. Adam, I'm supposed to approach God freely. And what about that verse that says I'm supposed to approach the throne of God boldly? And I get all that. I understand. But I guess what I'm saying is don't take it for granted. That's a miracle. The fact that you can approach God at all is a supernatural thing. It's a miracle. The fact that you can pray and God goes, yeah, that's a miracle. The fact that you can enter his presence, the fact that you ever feel his presence is a miracle. It's a miracle. There was a high cost to your ability to approach God at all. That's why I get so weirded out the way some people talk to God and about God. You ever seen the movie Joe Dirt? That's like my favorite left turn ever in a sermon right there. Talking about the reverence of God, so Joe Dirt, if you're not familiar, it's a David Spade movie. He has a mullet, a glorious mullet. He loves fireworks in the movie. What's it about? I have no idea. It's a redneck guy. Kid Rock's in the movie because, of course, he is. Couldn't exist without him. Christopher Walken is also in the movie, which maybe is a little bit surprising if you don't know who Christopher Walken is. He's the cowbell guy. And I can't do an impression of Walken, but I got a fever Prescription is more cowbell. He's that guy. So there's this scene. I'm going somewhere. There's this scene where Kid Rock's character pulls up in a car next to Joe Dirt's car, and in the back, Christopher Walken's character is sitting in the back, and Joe Dirt's sitting in the driver's seat. And Kid Rock starts talking to Joe Dirt, and he's talking to him disrespectfully. He's being disrespectful to Joe Dirt. And Walken's character kind of interrupts him, and he delivers this amazing line. He goes, "You're talking to my guy all wrong. It's the wrong tone. You do it again, and I'll stab you in the face with a soldering iron." Now leave the second part. I like the second part, but this whole idea, you're talking to my guy all wrong. It's the wrong tone. I love that. Like he's saying, hey, it's not like what you're saying, but it's like the approach. It's the way you're going about it. It's your tone of voice. It's your attitude. That's the thing that's off. Fine, talk to him, but don't talk to him like that. And that's kind of how I feel with a lot of people. Talking to my guy all wrong. Wrong tone, wrong approach, wrong attitude, wrong posture. I don't want you to be blissfully, ignorantly fearless when you approach God. I want you to approach God with a deep understanding of the miracle that it is and the cost that was paid for that approach. Yes, fearlessly, absolutely, but understand why. Understand why. So again, I want to ask you, how do you approach God? It is fearless, and I want to clearly state it's fearless. The reason it's fearless is because you're not approaching God based off of your own resume. You're not approaching God based off of how good you are. You're not. You're approaching God based off of how good Jesus is, and that you can have an insane level of confidence. I'm not entering God's presence based off my own goodness. It's what Jesus has done. So I can be confident, I can be fearless, but I want to remember what it costs for me to be fearless. I got to bring that too. So how do you approach? So what I'm going to do, I want to be kind of practical here. I'm going to give you 5 postures that you should have when you approach God. And it's an acronym, which I want to make fun of myself for before you get to it, because I know acronyms in church were like really popular in 1995, and we kind of stopped doing that. But I'm going to give you an acronym because you go remember it, but it is lame. It's the acronym HEART. It's perfect. It's like too perfect. Now like, oh, your heart when you pray like this. Okay, good. I made fun of it. You don't have to. You're welcome. So the H, when you approach God, the H is humble. This is about how you view you. You're not walking into the presence of God with your chest puffed out. You know who you are. You know your sinful state. You know your heart. You're not walking in there, head up. What's up? You're not doing that. Because you understand the distance between you and him, or you begin to understand. You understand it like seeing 2 miles out into the ocean, aware that there's almost 3,000 more miles, but you can't really begin to understand what 41 million square miles is like. You just know that it's way, way bigger than you. So you're humble. And James said that God opposes the proud but gives grace to the humble. So you're not going to walk in proud because you don't want God to oppose you, right? You want to get grace when you approach God, so you approach humbly. That's the first thing. The E is for expectant, like we sang about. You want to come to God with an expectant faith. Like the woman who touched the hem of his garment. I feel like she's one of the more underrated characters in the Bible, even though people think a lot of, it's crazy the level of faith that she had to approach Jesus the way she did. She had a faith in Jesus, but it's not even like believing that he could heal her. She believed that Jesus, about his character, that he so would be willing and could heal her that it would happen even if he didn't know he was doing it, that it was so in line with who he was that healing power would just come out of him, that she could just touch it and back away and be healed. That's a crazy level of faith. Not just that he could, but in his character. And that's how you want to approach God. Not just that he can do stuff, but that he genuinely wants the best for you. That's an expectant kind of faith when you approach him. And then the A is for awe. You want to be awe-filled when you approach. This is about who he is. You remember that you are speaking to the King of the universe, the creator of all things. He created oceans you can't swim, mountains you can't climb, and stars you can't reach. He wrote your DNA. You got to remember who you're speaking to. There's an awe to that, the majesty and the power of that. That's why I like going to the ocean and seeing mountains and stuff like that. It reminds me that I'm small. We don't remember that we're small enough. There's a story about a theologian who used to go out and lay in the night sky and look at the stars. I think it was with one of his friends, and then they would lay there for a while, and then he would say the line, "I think I feel small enough." And then he would go to bed. It was like this reminder, like, hey, I'm so small compared to God, and that's the awe that we need to carry into his presence. And the R is for real, authentic. You need to be you when you approach God. That Hebrew verse that talks about approaching God's throne with boldness, the word translated boldness probably could be better translated like open, genuine, nothing hidden. You're not faking anything when you enter the presence of God. You approach as you are. That means if you're sad, angry, excited, blah, whatever whatever 0.0 you are version that's you. You bring it to him. You can cry, you can scream, you can cuss, you can sit in silence, you can give him the ball of emotion or whatever it is. You just don't fake it. It makes no sense to fake it in the presence of God. He already knows that stuff about you. I think one of the things we fake the most is we feel doubt sometimes and we don't talk to God about it. As if he's like the one person you shouldn't talk to about it. You're like, well, it's inappropriate. No, he is actually the one person you should talk to your doubts about. Why are you hiding it? He already knows it anyways. And that's, by the way, that's Satan's play. He's trying to get you to hide it. He's trying to get you to keep it from God, because the moment you bring it into the light, God does something with it. So you be you. You be you. Real, authentic, open you. And then the T is thankful. Your default state before God is thankful. The Bible says that we are to enter his courts with thanksgiving. So like the one thing you bring with you into the presence of God would be things that you're going to be grateful for. And you're looking for those. You're looking for those to bring to him. That's because you want to. You want to focus on those things that are good. And you want to give him the honor that is due for those good things. Thankful. So how you approach God, how your posture towards God is humble, expectant, awe-filled, real, and thankful. Fearless, yes, but not flippant. Bold, absolutely, but not brash. Free, yes, but at the highest cost. At the highest cost. Because you know you're not approaching based off of your own goodness, you're approaching based off of Jesus' goodness. One of my favorite parts in the Chronicles of Narnia story is when it's the first book, it's The Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe, where the 4 children get into this magical world, Narnia, and they're just starting their exploration, and they hear about this being named Aslan. And in the story, he represents Jesus. And they're talking to these beavers. The beavers talk, I know it's weird. So they're talking to these beavers and they have this conversation. They're asking questions like, well, what's Aslan like? And the beavers answer, well, Aslan is a lion. The great lion. And then one of the kids says, oh, I thought he was a man. Is he quite safe? I shall feel rather nervous about meeting a lion. And the beaver responds, safe? Who said anything about safe? Of course he isn't safe, but he's good. He's the king. And like that, if I could make one critique of the way like we American Christians kind of view God, as we view him as safe, and he's not, but he's good. And that's so much better. It's so much better than a safe God, is we have a good one. But let's not approach him like he's safe. Let's approach him like he's good. It's the right posture. So I asked my little girl, my little 5-year-old, earlier this week, I asked her like why she wasn't afraid of the ocean. So the context for the conversation, we were sitting on my bed. She had just brushed her teeth, and she was doing the thing that kids do where now is the time to have every conversation that we haven't had today because I don't want to go to bed. Like that was the whole thing. I don't know if your kids do that. It was like, let's talk about literally everything. She's just trying to run out the clock. And I knew it. I was being played, but I let her because she's the littlest. So I was asking her a question. She was telling me what she's going to be when she grows up. By the way, she's going to be a surfer girl. She changed. She wants to surf now. I'm like, okay. So it brought up the subject. I'm like, hey, why weren't you afraid of the ocean? And she gave one of those answers, it's like out of a Hallmark movie. It was absurd. It didn't even feel real. She looked at me and she goes, well, because you were with me, Daddy. And I was like, you can stay up as late as you want. Do whatever you want. Now, I want to clarify that faith in me was a little misplaced. I can't swim that good and I can't fight the sharks that she thought I'd fight, all that. But my love, she was banking on my love for her. And I was like, okay, that works. And like, that's what I want you to, that's the attitude, that's the demeanor. You're banking on his love for you. When you approach God, yes, you're sinful. Yes, you've screwed up over and over and over again. And yes, there's things in your life that don't look the way you want. And you've got a whole bunch of stuff going on inside of here. And maybe you're a little angry, you're a little doubtful, you're a little whatever. But you're approaching him on the basis of he loves you right as you are. And yes, he's holy. And yes, he's perfect. And honestly, he's terrifying. But he's good. And you're approaching him based off of his goodness and his love and what Jesus did on the cross for you. And the thing that's shocking is that we don't do it very often. Like like prayer is a miracle. The fact that God listens to us at all, the fact that we can approach him at all, like this should be a thing that draws us in. We should be blown away. If we could go back and talk to Uzzah or Isaiah or Moses or any of these people, or the priests that tried to enter the temple, they'd be like, what, you can enter God's presence whenever you want? They would be blown away. How is that possible? And we don't take advantage of it. This should draw us in. This should draw us in. How do you approach God? Let's do it. Lord, thank you. Thank you for letting us in. Thank you for Jesus. Thank you for dying on the cross, taking our sin, allowing us to approach. Lord, I pray for the person who has not crossed the line of faith, that right now they would make that decision. They would give their sin to you, and the separation would be gone. They could have a relationship with you. Lord, I pray for the Christian who maybe has been a little too flippant in their approach to you, Lord. I pray that we would carry that weight, that we would understand the gravity of approaching you, King of the universe. I pray that we'd be immensely grateful that you listen, that you're here right now. And I pray that it would draw us into it more. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.